Welcome in, everybody. It is Thursday, February 8th. I am Andrew, and this is PuckTime, powered by WagerTalk TV. And I have the one and only Bryan Leonard with me today. And it's just the two of us to break down three quality games here today. Colorado, Carolina, Flames, and Devils. And the last one we'll discuss, we have the Lightning taking on Patrick Waugh's New York Islanders. Of course, best bets at the end of the show. And we'll always have some discussion as well about the game, about some betting, and everything else in between. Mr. Leonard, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Nice winner last night for clients. In fact, I'm undefeated since the All-Star break, making a nice run. And it's been a while since I've had a real nice run. So very excited, seeing the card well, and got a few games to discuss today. And I want to pick your brain on a couple other concepts. So should be a lot of fun.
Well, I always love talking back and forth, whether it's just about hockey or whether it's about betting strategy. So why don't we start things off with that, kind of just in some open discourse? Anything that you're noticing in the NHL or anything that's on your mind?
Yeah, there's a couple things. We'll start off with Jonathan Quick. I don't watch enough Rangers games to know what he has done differently this year. But I watched a show yesterday, and Carmine kind of talked about that. He says, is that really a downgrade? And the line continues to move against when Jonathan Quick is out there. So my question is, I'm more of a long-term kind of guy, although I do talk about the last 10 games many times. Is Jonathan Quick good, or is he just on a good streak here? Because when he played for the Knights last year, they went through 4 goalies, and he was clearly their worst goalie. I thought he'd be out of the league, and he is surprising the hell out of me. Congratulations to him. Great job by the Rangers for picking him up. But what's your thoughts on Jonathan Quick?
One thing I've noticed is his rebound control. He's just not giving up those juicy rebounds he was giving up in Vegas and earlier on the past few years. It seems like he's just playing, simplified his game, I guess I would say. But, it also gives you a lot of confidence when, you have that other goalie right there with you. Some people think that internal competition is a bad thing, but a lot of times for the Vegas Golden Knights, their goalie situation, as you mentioned, Bryan, how many injuries did they have? They had so many guys go down. So then when you got put in the spotlight, you thought it was your team. There was so much weight on your shoulders, where it seems to me like Quick and Shesterkin are sharing the workload. I did find it quite interesting, though, that Quick has now played both games since the All-Star break return. But guess who was the All-Star? Shesterkin. So to me, that's interesting. I messaged Carmine yesterday about it, actually getting his thoughts. Because I was saying to him earlier on in the year, maybe it's not Shesterkin's net come playoff time, but you can never go wrong with having two great goaltenders. That's for sure. But yeah, it's amazing sometimes what happens to a player when they change teams. And I guess in a more negative way, we look at a guy like Jonathan Huberdeau, forward. He goes from Florida to Calgary. I don't know if it's the cold weather, Bryan, but he's also looked like a whole new player. And this time it's in a bad way.
Yeah, it's definitely Vancouver just had they just brought a new guy in the other day, and he scored 2 goals for them. So it's you never know. It's in baseball, you don't have the salary cap for the most part. So you've got certain teams that, like the Dodgers or whatever, that can just build every year and they don't care. And the Yankees used to be that way. Hockey's a little bit different because of the salary cap. And I have noticed that the hardest position to really get a good feel on is goalies, because look at Aiden Hill. I mean, the guy right now is standing on his head. To me, he's the best goalie in the NHL when he's healthy. And we got him Vegas got him for a 3rd round draft choice. I mean, you never know from one year to the next. So all these guys need is a little bit of a opportunity, and they could take it. And he has done that in Vegas. Another thing I want to talk about is the Washington Capitals. They went into that game the other day against Montreal. They'd lost 4 straight games. on the calendar after playing Montreal, they have Florida, Boston, Vancouver, and Colorado. This is a veteran team in Washington. They've lost 5 games in a row, and there's a very good chance that they're going to lose at least 3 out of these 4, probably the next 4. Is this a team we can fade the rest of the year?
I think it is, Brian. Look, as a Canadians fan, I couldn't get to the window on taking the Canadians last game. I really wanted to. I really was tempted by it. But, I had a feeling we were going to get either like a really strong performance out of the Habs or a really ugly one. I figured that no matter what happened in that game, it was not going to be a close game. One team was going to get dominated. But, I tweeted out the other day, and this is kind of more just like, creating a storyline here, but does it negatively impact the franchise of the Washington Capitals that Ovechkin is chasing that streak right now? Do you think it does? Because I think that what is sometimes really hard for teams to do is to hit that full reset and rebuild button. And, I'll even use the Montreal Canadiens as a team that I follow closely. Obviously, as you know, over the last year or two, this is probably the first time they've ever done this, like a rebuild. And the problem is that, I always say this, if the team I cheer for is going to be bad, I want them to be bad and young. Don't be bad and half your players be 28, 29 years old, right? Right now with the Capitals, they seem like they're at a point where they're not willing to give up, but they're definitely not, a winning team. So do you feel like that affects them a little bit? Because I think that you have a superstar like that. Like, to me, living in the far east coast of Canada, a lot of us, me and my friends and just people on the street that like hockey, we discuss, will Sidney Crosby play for the Pittsburgh Penguins for his whole career? Gretzky moved teams, right? But you know how low profile Sid is. He's loyal to the team. He got drafted there, obviously. Will he stay there? Those are all the questions. But because Ovechkin's done so much for the team, do you think it negatively impacts the Capitals because he's chasing that streak? They don't want to be a bad team for him.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than what you would find in baseball, where you've got certain guys going for records. I remember when Cal Ripken was going for his streak, and he really wasn't playing overly well. And they said he's bringing down the team, the whole bit. But baseball is more of an individual game where the guy that comes up to bat once every nine batters. So it's not hockey where when you're on the ice, what you do is not just shoot, but you have to pass, you have to play defense, you do the whole bit. And it affects the team a little bit more, I think, in a team game like hockey than it would be in baseball, which, other than defense, offense is an individual game. You get the best hitters in baseball. Look at the Atlanta Braves, how good they've played the last couple of years. They've just got a tremendous offense and great pitching. So, it's a little bit different, and I think it does hurt them. But since they did beat Vegas in the Stanley Cup Finals a few years ago, 6 years ago, I believe, that gives them a little bit of a headway, I guess, because they did get that championship. If it was a team sort of like Toronto, where high expectations every year and they don't get it done, that may have a little bit more of a concern, at least for me.
I'm curious to see, but what these prices will get, fading them down the stretch. But I'm looking forward to doing it, Brian. Anything else you wanted to mention before we jump into the first game?
No, if anything comes up while we're speaking, we'll just talk about that. But yeah, let's just get to the first game.
Sounds good. And I've got a question for you that I'm going to throw at you between the games. So actually, you know what? I'll throw it to you as I introduce the first game. Let's talk about the Colorado Avalanche here and the Carolina Hurricanes going head-to-head tonight. We have Carolina being favored in this one. Minus 135 is the price I'm seeing at one shop. Total 6.5, shaded towards the under. If you want the puck line, you can get as high as plus 180 on this Hurricanes team. The question I was going to throw at you, Bryce, is just pretty simple here. How much do you take into account home ice advantage in the NHL? I know most people will say it's different for each team, but this Colorado team, at home versus on the road. Can we start labeling them that much of a different team at this point when they're at home versus on the road?
Yeah, I believe they're 5-10 the last 10 games or the last 15 games on the road. And it is their third game in 4 days here, playing. Normally, third game in 4 days is a team you want to fade. But since they did come back from the break, I don't know if it'll have as much impact as it would in a normal situation. You take a look at the Hurricanes, they're in the middle of playing 11 to 12 games at home. That last game was Saturday against the Devils. So this is a team that's not only rested, but most of the time in the last few weeks, they've been at home. They haven't had to travel. The only problem is they have not played well against Carolina. They're against Colorado. Colorado's 4-1 the last 5, I believe, against Carolina, 9-4 the last 13. And you're catching the Avalanche off of back-to-back losses coming out of the break. This is a tough game to handicap. You mentioned Carolina, as good as they are at home, Colorado fading a little bit on the road. But when you get, actually both teams are coming off a loss, by the way. But when you get a team as good as Colorado is, and they're off back-to-back losses, and the offense really did not play that well. I know Carolina's got a very good defense. In fact, I believe Colorado basically outscores Carolina offensively about one goal a game more. So I would expect Colorado's offense to be a lot better today. I kind of like the over for the team total here. I was able to get over 2.5 and lay about 150 on here. I think that was my best bet on this game. As good as Carolina is, I don't trust them all the time, especially in a favorite role. So I think Colorado to score some goals in this one is the way I'll take a look at this one.
I'm right there with you, Brian. I mean, this Carolina team, can we say that they're the same Carolina team that they were last year? Looking at the last few games for them, they have been playing some defensive hockey, and that's been creating their success. But then you look back at kind of the back five of their last 10 games, they have given up some goals, against some teams that maybe they wouldn't like to give up so many. 5 to Minnesota there, 5 to Los Angeles. So, this Carolina team, I like to say they have home ice advantage. I like to say they're one of the more home ice teams, but you look at that loss they had against Vancouver. Vancouver kind of beat them at their own game. And you'd like to think here in this one with the 3 games in 4 nights, I don't know what the schedule makers, what their problem is with the Avalanche. I don't know what they thought they were doing with them, but after the All-Star break, handing them the schedule that they did, it's interesting to me. But the reason why I'm just going to rock with the full game over is because of Colorado's road tendencies to give up more goals on the road. It seems like a lot of times when overs hit for Colorado when they play at home, it's their team total going over. It's them doing the scoring. But when they're on the road, the games are going over because they're allowing goals as well. Both teams, obviously, like you mentioned, will not be happy as we go into this game for different reasons. For me, looking at Colorado, I find it interesting when a team, they lost both styles of hockey. Colorado loses a higher scoring game against New Jersey 5-3. And then they also lost a lower scoring brand of hockey, losing 2-1 against the Rangers. So, one night they go in and they play a lockdown defensive game. The next night, Brian, they're like, you know what? We're going to open things up and see what happens. And they lose that one as well, which is certainly frustrating. But I think this one's a good prop game. I think you can find definitely some good value on some guys with some point props or some shots on goal props, which I will have some free plays up for on my X page. But I like the over 6.5 here in this one. I like the price you're getting. Sometimes you take these overs, Brian, you're getting like minus 125, 130. Yesterday, I believe there was a total that closed at minus 140. At least at this one, you're getting a pretty good price here in a situation I think both teams are going to get on the scoreboard. So I'll take the over in this one and just hope that if Colorado responds, they continue giving up goals. I know that Carolina, in their heart, like to who they are, they're probably a low-scoring team still. Rod Brendamore, their coach, that's how he wants them to play. But there's something to me, Brian, I'll get your thoughts on this really quick about when you get beat at your own game. that's got to be frustrating sometimes in a game like last time out for Carolina, to play that low scoring tight game and then to lose by one goal, you know?
Yeah, I read a lot of comments out of Edmonton after losing that game the other night to Vegas. And during the game, they talked about how they wanted to play defense very similar to Vegas, and they had mentioned how tough it was to get off clean shots, both teams coming out blocking a lot of shots. That's what Vegas has done, and we see this every season in all the sports. Whatever team seems to win it, a lot of teams try to do what that team does, and it's adjustments. It's very similar to in-game adjustments for the coaches. You make in-season adjustments, and when you find a team that does that and you still can't beat them, that is got to be on Edmonton's mind right now. At least that's what the articles I'm reading is. They've set this team up so they could play this way, and then the team they learned it from, they still can't beat. Although I've got to admit to you, I watched that entire game and I thought Edmonton was the better team. They just didn't have much luck in that game. And in fact, when you take a look at the money puck situation where it says where they have the deserve to win meter, Edmonton was the better team there. So I'm not going to buy too much into that. But yeah, it's if you're looking to go into a game and you can't win by the way you want to play, it is concerning. Um, I'll go back to yesterday's game, Minnesota playing Chicago. Chicago's smart enough to know without Bedard in the lineup, they're not going to score many goals. So their entire thought process is don't screw up offensively and try to play as good a defense as you possibly can. And which is why I played the Minnesota team total under yesterday for my clients, is because Minnesota's offense is not good enough to be able to score on a team like Chicago, who is going to pack it in like that. And the game was 1-1 late, and it was never in doubt of going under. But you've got to be able to look at that. And so now we see that what Chicago is doing, you could throw away a lot of the early season stats for Chicago. They were just out there trying to figure out what the team's going to do. But once they lost Bedard, the coaching staff did a really nice thing. And they're still not going to win many games, but they're not going to get embarrassed. So you guys were talking about that. I believe it was on yesterday's show about when you play a team that's so much better than the other. Minnesota was a 2-1 favorite in that game. So you got one team that's supposed to win in blowout style. Well, you can't always get the blowout. You're just happy to get the win. And the way Minnesota's season's gone, they're very happy to get out of there with a 1-goal win. But keep that in mind when Chicago plays from now on. You talked about playing Chicago under, but also if it's a high spread game, and it will be in most of the games Chicago plays, take a look at playing their opponent under too, because the other team can just sit back, relax, play good defense, and get out of there with a victory.
And that's the thing, is that it really hasn't changed. It has not changed for the Blackhawks since Bedard went out. It's like you said there, the coach did them a favor. It's like, you know what, guys, you don't want to get embarrassed out there. We can't play like the other teams. We have to play to kind of sit back and protect. I know this is kind of out of both of our realms, talking about European football, soccer here, Brian, but it reminds me of the World Cup when a far inferior team plays against a really strong team, right? They play the best they possibly can defensively for like 70 minutes. And the second the first goal goes in, the floodgates open up and it finishes like 4-1. Because for the longest they possibly can, they've tried and keep it super tight. So, and I've noticed that as well and I don't have the exact numbers on this. We'll have to talk to Ralph about it, but I think like when a team is like minus 300 or higher, I'm noticing a lot of unders as well. Like of those big favorites, because what's happening is the opponent's going under their team total and the favorites winning like 3-1 or 4-1.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have both teams, it takes two to tango. You can't go over a lot with just one team, right? So super interesting to look at that. But Brian, let's talk about the next one here. Take a look at this Calgary Flames team here against the New Jersey Devils. I'm seeing minus 145s, 150s here in favor of the Devils. Total being 6.5 here. Small lean towards the over as it's at minus 115. But I'm kind of caught between two different narratives I've created here. I think the Devils are a buy team, I did a video on WagerTalk today talking about them to make the playoffs, but I also love the angle here for the Calgary Flames, getting rid of Lindholm. Everyone's starting to write them off. They're being known as sellers. You talked about, are we going to fade the Washington Capitals and get good prices on that? Are we going to get too good to be true prices on this Flames team? Because it kind of feels like at this point now we're going to get prices that are hard to pass up in the underdog position.
Yeah, this game has me flummoxed, as they say. Coming into the season, Calgary had a lot of injuries last year, and we were thought to be a much better team than what their record showed. And a lot of people were buying Calgary coming into this year. New Jersey, they had a coming out last year, and they looked really good. And that was another team everybody wanted to buy. But I have to admit, if you're a fan of either one of these teams, you got to be disappointed on the way the season's gone. Calgary just hasn't put it together. I don't know what the reasoning being. They do play in a very tough division, and even the bad teams, other than San Jose, Anaheim's shown at times that they could knock off some good teams, and the rest of the division is very good. Jersey's one of those teams without Hughes. I don't want to back them, and that is the concern. I think they're going to win? Yes, I do think they're going to win. Am I willing to lay the 145, 150 to find out? No, I'm not. Both of these teams have disappointed me, and as well as most bettors on the season. Much rather play New Jersey at home, but then when you take a look at their home record, it's not that impressive. So this is a game, unfortunately, I'm staying out of because I just can't figure out a way to take a look at this one. Maybe wait until get some in play and see how the game's going, but pre-game wager, I'm going to have to sit this one out.
Well, I look towards the Devils right now, and at the very least, over a small sample here, obviously these numbers are going back before the All-Star break here, Brian. The very least, they're giving up 3 goals a game. Giving up 3 to Colorado in victory, 6 to Tampa Bay, 3 to Carolina in defeat, 5 to the Vegas Golden Knights in a victory, 6 against the Dallas Stars. So, when I look at this team right now, it's not the same Devils team as why they were so successful last season. And that's what people aren't realizing. Sure, Jack Hughes is injured. Yes, Dougie Hamilton injured. Haula injured. They've had some problems to deal with. But what made this team so successful last year is that they were an under team. And now, even without Jack Hughes, they've kind of still been an over team because they've dealt with all kinds of defensive, problems and goaltending issues that just haven't been great. I mean, New Jersey is a team that will probably end up picking up a goaltender at the trade deadline. If I could bet that, Brian, I would. They need somebody, whether it's just someone for their system, a backup, whatever it may be. Sometimes, Nico Dawes hasn't been the answer because, even in victory, if you're a Devils fan or you're someone betting on the Devils, you're not having any stress-free wins. Every single win they get, they have to earn. Like, you are fighting until the last second of play. So looking at this game, Brian, I'm tempted to look towards the Carmine special in this one. And he always talks about that poor record for the Devils in the first period. So you know where I'm going. I'm going to take this Flames team to come out hot and get things going in the first period on the Flames first period money line, getting that plus money price here. You mentioned it, the entry price for the New Jersey Devils to punch your ticket in to lock them in as a side bet, a little bit pricey. So instead of me picking a winner for the entire game, I'm going to just take a look at the Flames to come out and have a great start to their game. And hopefully we can see that, because this to me is a Devils team that no matter if they're playing good hockey or they're playing bad hockey, they're still playing in some kind of open ice type of games where they're giving up some goals.
Yeah, you mentioned New Jersey defensively and in the goaltender's position. I looked at that and I thought the best way for myself to play this game would be the Calgary team total over 2.5. You're laying about 150, 153, something in that range there. But this New Jersey defense, New Jersey goaltending has not been good. But I don't want to lay that big number with New Jersey. If I'm going to lay something, it'll be over the 2.5 goals for Calgary. Calgary's not an offensive juggernaut by any means, but they seem to score 2 to 3 goals every game against better defensive teams. So I think if I'm going to play this one, it would be the Calgary team total over 2.5 in the minus 150 range.
I just don't like these prices. We have to mention, though, I was just reminded by Don Buster, who just messaged me, Jack Hughes is in the lineup tonight. So I thought it was questionable game time decision, but he is 100% in the lineup tonight. And as I've talked about on many, many shows, the way I feel about this Devils team is a lot different if he's involved. Might actually put me on the over, actually, looking at this matchup with him back in with his offense, because the Flames, I think that you got a lot of stuff to prove, I find. Like, you see it happen all the time. Like, look what happened with the Canadiens against the Capitals, right? Sean Monahan gets traded. Everybody on social media is ripping on the roster. People were saying that roster couldn't even beat an AHL team, and they go ahead and put up 5. Suzuki gets 2, Slavkovsky gets 2. So what's going to happen with this Flames team without Lindholm, trading away some key pieces? Might look towards the over, but I'm definitely going to stick with that first period play there on the Flames. Bryan, I want to mention a chart that Ralph sent over to us. Carm grabbed this from him, and I'm always curious about an update just on how the totals are going for each number, because I did say that I find these 5.5s have started to go under lately. But as a large scale, they've gone over quite a bit. So taking a look at these 5.5s here, we're seeing 35 and 23, 60.3%. The 6s, 115, 113, 29, 50.4. So about even there with the 6s. 6.5s, though, we're seeing go under at a considerable clip. And let's not forget, a lot of these 6.5s we see that people are betting, they're juiced, right? We're seeing 125, 130s, and that's the issue. And that is the reason, even though I've definitely cooled off with the team totals, that's why I like the team totals, because if you like a total to the 6.5, a lot of times you can get a plus price or just a much lower number on the juice than you're going to get when you're playing these over 6.5s. And as I mentioned earlier, when you bet a full game over, you need 2 teams to show up, not just one. So you're counting on both teams to go back and forth. And the sevens, it's so interesting to me to look at this: 10, 17, and 6, 37%. It's crazy. I mean, a lot of times these 7s, you might as well just be betting exact score, 4-3 one team, 4-3 the other, because so many times the game lands on exactly 7. But I know you've gotten more into the totals, Bryan. Before we jump into the next game, any thoughts on this? Any takeaways from this here? And the next one I'm going to get from Ralph's going to be as far as the favorites and the prices. But overall, any thoughts?
Not really. I'm a believer in what Buster talks about, and thank you, Buster. That makes me like my team total over even better, because it's going to be more of a shootout. Yeah, he talks about how easy it is to get over 5.5, and you really need to take a look at that. I have found, I'm a big believer in line movements, and we've got 2 games today in which the line opened higher, or the total opened higher and has been bet down. For example, we had Philadelphia and Winnipeg. It opened 6 minus 130 to under. It's gone down to 5.5. And then the Vegas game opened 6 under 25. Has gone down to 5.5. Those initial moves have been very good on the season. Unfortunately, the lines move so fast that we can't really give those out to our clients, but we can bet them for ourselves. And I think in the long run, the 5.5s will continue to go over. But I'm going to mention something today when I get to my best bet that may change your mind on at least 1 or 2 games today, and for example, for the next few days. So hopefully we can learn something the next few days, but I'll get to that when I get to my best bet.
Well, let's jump into our last one here. We'll discuss before best bets. Guys, want to remind everybody out there about the rest of February special. Obviously, the sooner you purchase, the more plays and packages you'll be saving on. Rest of February, great deal, $199. Every handicapper has that up on their page, WagerTalk.com. Works for Brian, works for myself, works for Carmine, works for Buster, works for everybody here as far as the PuckTime crew and all over WagerTalk.com. Super Bowl, college basketball, NBA, NHL, UFC, so many great sports going on right now. You can get the rest of February for just $199. We always shout out the long-term approach. And right now, I'm in a rut, Brian, and I'm looking forward to the comeback. I'm looking forward to getting going again. But I always say that even in these situations, if anybody's interested in my plays, you're better off getting 7 days or 30 days. Join for the long haul instead of just sticking with that one night. People talk about it all the time. I heard Steve Merrill talking about it yesterday. He's on like an 8-2 run. Somebody bought one day and they lost, and the guy was, giving it to him in the comment section. It's like, you can't win every single day, but $199 rest of February is a great one to look at. But let's talk about Tampa and the New York Islanders here. We talk about the Alberta double. There's also the New York double, going from playing the Rangers to the Islanders here. I'm seeing minus 140 for the home team. What are your thoughts here in this one?
It seems awful high, doesn't it? Lightning on a current 8-2 run. They did play last night against the Rangers in the game that I mentioned with Jonathan Quick, playing a great game, but second to back-to-back, losing last night 3-1. But the travel isn't a concern here, as you mentioned, the two New York teams. So it's not a concern, other than tired legs, maybe from being their first game back from the All-Star break. The Islanders have stayed under this total in 7 of 9 games. And the total I mentioned here is a little bit higher than what we normally expect out of the Islanders games, but it's a 6.5. And like I mentioned earlier about how the Lions move, it opened at 6, is now up 6.5 everywhere. So the guys who got the early bets on are playing the over here. And I can see that a little bit, but the Islanders are a team that I think tries to stay under if they can. Tampa Bay is going to try to outscore you. That's what they do, and they're very good in that regard. But it may be somewhat of a correlated parlay, Tampa to the over, the Islanders to the under. But I think the Tampa Bay side catching this number is pretty good. I rate them as a slightly better team than what the Islanders are right now. And yeah, you are playing your back-to-back, but as I mentioned earlier, you've had the last 10 days off or whatever, so it's a little bit differently than it would be in the course of a regular season. So I think the Tampa side is the way to look here in an underdog that I consider to be the better team.
Well, it's certainly a great price. And Tampa Bay, I believe, like you talked about, has been a team that, you don't have to worry too much long-term about the back-to-backs. They've been a pretty good back-to-back team. And the travel, not like they're taking a crazy flight. They're not really going too far. So the back-to-back factor, sometimes it's better than if they were traveling home and playing. Sometimes that's actually better than, just going across the bridge and playing there. I'm going to continue to look towards the unders here. I took a look, and since the new year, since the clock took to 2024 here, this Tampa Bay team top 10 in expected goals against. Actually playing some good defensive hockey, which has led to their success. A lot of their overs, a lot of the games that have seen goals this season for them have just been them doing the scoring. Their defense has actually been pretty respectable. New York, since that exact same time frame, since January 1st, about middle of the pack, expected goals against here. But looking at the systems under Patrick Waugh, I kept on talking about it. Whether or not they're winning or losing, this team's playing very, very tight hockey. The problem is with this New York Islanders team, I'm not saying they don't have any star players. Like Barzal is good. They obviously have some young guys as well. Bo Horvat has been great since he got picked up by them. They don't really have the game breakers. So they have a bunch of guys that buy in defensively, play 200-foot hockey. But it seems to me that both these teams have no problem with playing a tight checking physical brand that leads me to believe there's not going to be much open ice out there. I keep on talking about some games I've watched recently that had that playoff vibe to it, even though they're in different conferences. When Colorado met New York, the Rangers, that was a playoff feel to it. When we had the Vegas Golden Knights and Oilers play the other day, when the streak was snapped, that felt like a playoff game. Tonight, we have these two teams play. It's a back-to-back for Tampa Bay. I feel like it's going to be kind of that same vibe. Last night I cashed an under on the New York Rangers and Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm going right back to the well with the under here. And obviously wishing the absolute best for Sergachev in his recovery. I saw him post. He was very frustrated about that. I wanted to mention, Brian, sometimes when a guy like that goes out, it affects the team offensively. Sergachev isn't the biggest game breaker as an offensive defenseman, but the guy who's replacing him, whoever's getting more minutes, probably isn't that same offensive guy that he is. So I'll look towards under 6.5 here.
When you take a look at the team total here, I don't think either one of us are high on the Islanders in this game. The Islanders team total is 3.5 under 125, 130. They're going to score 4 goals in this game against the Tampa Bay defense. As you said, was playing much better as of late. The Islanders don't score 4 goals many times anyway, right? So that might be something that you can, if you don't mind laying the 130, 125 on the under 3.5. I don't expect the Islanders to score 4 here, so we'll see. Maybe that's another thing we can take a look at.
And of course, Vasilevsky between the pipes the previous night. So Jonas Johansson, 3.34 goals against average, 10, 6, and 5 on the season, 894 save percentage. And we'll see. Well, I really think that I always say this, it's their job as a backup to be put in tricky situations. But it's funny the way you think about it, like, shouldn't the good goalie be put in the bad situations, not the backup? I always thought that was kind of funny in hockey, like how that works out, because like it's even though I like the under in this game, there's no denying back-to-backs, 3 games in 4 nights. Those situations tend to go over the total. And a lot of times it's the backup that gets the teams playing bad defensively, and it messes up their numbers, Brian, as far as their goalie statistics. But of course, we're not getting Vasi tonight. We are getting Johansson.
It reminds me a lot in baseball when Randy Johnson used to pitch, and all the best players for the other team would always say, I got a sore shoulder today, and they put in these guys that haven't played in 2 weeks, and they get to face Randy Johnson. Then at the end of the year, they wonder why their stats aren't very good.
It's the thing, man. It affects you. I mean, it really does affect your stats, especially as a goalie. You can play so well, but sometimes when your team lets you down, you can only control so much. So I mentioned that rest of February special, Brian. I'm assuming you'll have some plays up for the big game. I'm not sure. I know you're not one to force a play, but what do you have going short term, and anything long term you have going before your best bet?
Yeah, for the Super Bowl, for the side total, I don't think I'm going to have anything, but I will have some props. And I'm looking to play unders. And since we've gone this entire time where everybody bets their favorite players over, you always find value over the last week, over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, on betting these unders, player unders, team unders, score unders, those kind of things. And if you were to just bet those every single Super Bowl, you've made a profit in just about all of them, because you're going up against what everybody wants to see, and that's high scoring games. It's a big game. You're voting for your best player. You want Kelsey to get all his yardage. You want all the passing yards, the whole bit. So the general rule is just wait until the weekend of the game and bet those things under. I will go through on an individual basis and see which ones have the value, but that's the way I'm going to treat the Super Bowl. So I'm not going to force anything on the side and total. I think it's pretty much where it should be. If I catch 3 on Kansas City, I'll play Kansas City, but I don't think it's going to get there. In hockey, I think I'm going to have 3 plays today. Basketball, like I said, in hockey, I haven't lost a game since the All-Star break. Basketball, college basketball has been going very good. I think we're 7-3 the last couple of days. You go back to last month, 60% winners. So we'll have that up. Big day in college basketball. And yeah, if you can get the rest of the month for the 199, that's a hell of a deal.
It's a great one. We always preach the long term. I look forward to it, Brian. All your prop plays, I'm sure you're going to have all kinds of Taylor Swift props as well. Got to mix in those those celebrity props. But what do you have for us for a play you can give out? Kind of as, a selected one for the show play here you can give us to wrap things up.
Okay, I'm going to give out my best bet in a second, but I want to give out something that's correlated with this, and one of the reasons why I like this. You had mentioned the 5.5s lately have been going under. I went and took a look in games involving a team in their first game coming out of the break. Unless I've miscalculated, in the team's first game coming out of the break, it only has to be one of the two teams. Sometimes it's both teams. 10-1 to the under, only averaging 4.27 goals per game. There's one team on the schedule tonight playing their first game coming out of the break, and that's the Arizona Coyotes. The same Arizona Coyotes who beat Vegas in their only meeting so far this season, 2-0. Arizona's got very good goaltending as of late, and it's gone under the view of the national media because Arizona's not a very good team. They're about a 500 team right now and not expected to be much better. But they've only given up 17 goals the last 8 games. And this is the first game of the second half. And as I mentioned, these games have tended gone under, especially if you just take a look at the 10-1 to the under on those games so far. 4.27 goals per game is very low. And even with the total of 5.5 here, I think it's a good bet. I'm assuming Adin Hill is playing tonight. I haven't seen anything as of late, but he's been fantastic since coming back. They had yesterday off. They don't play again until Monday. So really, there's no reason to put in Thompson if they don't have to, unless they think they could beat Arizona without Thompson. But that didn't happen last time they played. They were shut out 2-0. Thompson played well, and but they couldn't score. So Vegas off of that game against Edmonton. I talked about earlier about the money puck chances to win, deserve to win type of thing. They only had about a 35% chance to win that game. And that was a playoff type atmosphere. I wasn't at the game, but everybody I've talked to that went to the game said it was just like the playoffs. The announcers were talking about, and I always try to watch the visiting team's announcers to get a better feel on what they think it is there. And they were talking about how physical the game was. And, keep in mind, in that game, Vegas won the game because they had one penalty. They had one penalty all game long. And in fact, the only time Edmonton scored was when Vegas was on a power play. So they shut down Edmonton because of that. And they decided, and so we're not going to let them, get the power play on. And that's how you've got to be able to play them. So they played the perfect game against Edmonton in that game. Now, even though they lost to Arizona last time out, it will be somewhat of a letdown here coming off that Edmonton. You know what's going to happen. But I fully trust the defense on this team. Everybody except for Theodore is back defensively. And they've been very good the last few years when they get the core back defensively. And obviously with Adin Hill in goal. And, Vegas hasn't scored that much. Without Eichel, they've been able to get some slaps around the goal where, some bounces like as you were talking about with Jonathan Quick earlier. But they have not been able to set up plays. Their goals have been haphazard around the goal. The plays have not been good because not only is Eichel a great shooter, he's a great passer. He's a great playmaker. He can break over the blue line faster than just about anybody else. And so I like this game under the 5.5. I think it's a good bet.
Brian, I'm resisting pulling a Joe Ranieri and putting up that shot clock from the NBA show on you. It was such a great breakdown. I don't want to be that guy, but we certainly cashed the over on this show length for this one. I loved talking hockey with you for over 40 minutes. Great going back and forth with you. Congrats on another great year in the NHL. There's still so many games to go to try and build up the profit. And I know it's so long away to say this, but the playoffs are going to be awesome. And I look forward to picking your brain about some of your thoughts. And I always respect your opinion on the Vegas Golden Knights. Guys, you already heard my opinion on the best bet, so I'll just throw it out there. I'm on the under in the Tampa Bay and the New York game tonight, looking for another defensive game. I like the fact that I'm getting the 6.5 here. Both teams on a large scale past 4 to 6 weeks have been playing some defensive hockey, and that's what I'm going to go with tonight. Not worried about the back-to-back spot here for Tampa Bay. I believe they will still play a great defensive brand of hockey. Thanks so much for watching, guys. On behalf of Bryan Leonard, I am Andrew McGinnis, and I'll see you tomorrow right here on Puck Time.